Exactly 5,000 to 6,000 people perished in a span of 3 minutes on October 28, 1746, when an 8.8 magnitude earthquake annihilated the western coast of South America. The ensuing tsunami, carrying waves cresting at 24 meters, obliterated the nearby port of Callao, leaving only 200 survivors out of a population of thousands. Rubble choked the narrow streets as thick dust blotted out the midday sun, coating shattered colonial cathedrals in a dense layer of gray ash. Rebuilding a flattened capital on a seismically active desert plateau bordering the vast Pacific Ocean seemed like an absolute architectural impossibility for the surviving population. Yet the survivors refused relocation. Francisco Pizarro had originally established Lima in 1535, driving his sword into the dry earth of the Rimac River Valley to stake Spain's absolute claim over the conquered territory. He selected this specific coastal desert site because its natural harbor offered a vital maritime connection for exporting plundered silver back to the Spanish crown. The geography immediately presented brutal climatic realities, as it rarely rained in this arid coastal strip bordered by the towering peaks of the distant Andes. Fresh water relied entirely on glacial runoff rushing down toward the sea, forcing early settlers to adapt pre-existing Incan irrigation canals for basic survival. Water scarcity threatened urban expansion. Early colonial architects constructed massive adobe walls to fortify the settlement against constant pirate raids, essentially trapping urban expansion within rigid heavy military boundaries. The Viceroyalty of Peru commanded immense wealth, pouring silver into ornate Baroque structures like the Basilica and Convent of San Francisco, which somehow withstood the devastating tremors. Engineers surveying the 1746 wreckage realized they needed radical solutions, leading to the widespread adoption of quincha, a traditional indigenous building technique utilizing flexible bamboo frameworks. Builders coated these flexible frames in mud to absorb seismic shocks, ensuring that homes would sway rather than collapse when the tectonic plates violently shifted. Heavy stone vaults were abandoned. Streets were slightly widened during reconstruction to prevent collapsing facades from crushing fleeing pedestrians during future seismic events, fundamentally altering the dense urban grid. As centuries slowly passed, the once-walled colonial outpost burst its defensive borders, sprawling toward the cinematic fog over rooftops that routinely blanketed the coastal cliffs. By the late 19th century, President Nicolás de Pedrola initiated a sweeping modernization campaign, tearing down the obsolete defensive walls to construct grand European avenues. Architects pointing at models envisioned a sprawling metropolis connecting the dusty downtown directly to the affluent seaside resort neighborhoods of Miraflores and Barranco. The city demanded modern infrastructure. Massive engineering revolutions arrived in the early 20th century under President Augusto B. Leguía, who financed vast public works projects to celebrate Peruvian independence. Skyline cranes hoisted thousands of tons of steel to erect the Plaza San Martin, forever changing the architectural profile of the historic Central District. Heavy steam rollers paved the Avenida Arequipa, cutting a wide asphalt path through old agricultural estates to link the historic center directly with the oceanfront. Cement trucks rumbled down dirt roads as urban planners drained coastal marshes, laying the groundwork for San Isidro to become the modern financial center. Lima expanded at breakneck speed. A helicopter aerial over city zones during the 1950s would have captured an explosion of modernist architecture, completely replacing traditional colonial estates across the valley. This rapid mid-century expansion was driven by massive internal migration from the Andean highlands, completely transforming the demographic and spatial reality of the capital. Millions of rural citizens descended upon the coast seeking economic opportunity, rapidly establishing sprawling informal settlements known as pueblos jovines along the barren desert hillsides. These new neighborhoods lacked basic utilities, forcing residents to carry water up steep, unpaved inclines while fighting for official recognition from a disconnected municipal government. The fragmented geography required solutions. Visionary Mayor Luis Bedoya Reyes launched the highly controversial Via Expressa Paseo de la República in 1967 to connect the booming southern suburbs with downtown. Engineers excavated a massive trench, stretching 10.5 kilometers through the dense urban fabric, removing over 2 million cubic meters of rocky coastal earth. This sunken arterial road was designed specifically to alleviate crushing traffic congestion, functioning as an open-air canyon cutting directly through the heart of the metropolis. Operating heavy machinery day and night, construction crews poured roughly 300,000 tons of structural concrete to form the massive retaining walls lining the expressway. The highway split the capital. Below the chaotic streets, hidden layers of aging infrastructure severely struggled to support a booming population that skyrocketed from 1 million in 1940 to over 10 million today. Architect Ernesto Gastilumendi spent his entire career warning municipal leaders about the precarious nature of erecting heavy structures directly on top of sandy, unstable cliffs. He heavily advocated for strict zoning laws and ecological preservation along the famed Costa Verde waterfront promenade to protect the fragile coastal bluffs from erosion. Developers largely ignored these scientific warnings, pushing high-rise luxury construction closer and closer to the dramatic cliff edges overlooking the cold Pacific surf. The ocean relentlessly eroded the coastline. Today, sheer drops to the beach are heavily fortified with immense steel meshes to prevent catastrophic landslides from crushing the busy highway roaring below. The relentless tide hitting ancient seawall defenses constantly tests the structural integrity of the artificial beaches constructed to protect the coastal roadway from storm surges. Far away from the ocean, deep beneath the colonial center, the eerie catacombs of San Francisco contain the bones of an estimated 25,000 individuals. Monks arranged these skeletal remains in precise circular geometric patterns within a damp subterranean network originally meant to serve as the city's primary mass cemetery. The modern underground serves the living. Contemporary engineering teams now tackle the immense challenge of subterranean mass transit within a highly seismic, archaeologically sensitive zone holding centuries of buried secrets. Building the underground Lima Metro Line 2 represents one of the most complex public infrastructure projects in Latin American history, boasting a staggering budget of $5.6 billion. Tunnel boring machines slowly grind through the rocky subsoil, navigating carefully around forgotten Incan irrigation canals and colonial water pipes that form an unmapped underground maze. Subway tunnels must be heavily reinforced with specialized concrete segments specifically capable of flexing safely during a massive earthquake without fracturing or collapsing. The digging requires absolute precision. Transit authorities require assurance that a subway train arriving at station platforms remains perfectly safe even if an 8.5 magnitude event strikes the city above. Above ground, impassioned architects like Emilio Harthterre meticulously documented the historical importance of saving fragile colonial structures from aggressive urban renewal programs. Rapid modernization frequently bulldozed irreplaceable heritage sites to make way for gleaming corporate towers, erasing large swaths of architectural history in the name of economic progress. A modern drone flying through clouds over the financial district reveals a dense canopy of reflective glass and steel dominating the 21st century skyline. Intense sunlight periodically pierces the fog. This dense coastal grayness, known locally by residents as the panza de burro, traps humidity but rarely produces actual rain over the thirsty urban grid. Lima sits directly inside the Atacama Desert rain shadow, making it the second largest desert city globally after Cairo, Egypt, facing unprecedented modern climate challenges. Millions rely entirely on a highly vulnerable network of distant Andean reservoirs and aging underground pipes that lose countless gallons to undetected leaks every single day. To aggressively secure the future, engineers have initiated massive water diversion megaprojects, drilling deep high-altitude tunnels straight through solid Andean bedrock to siphon distant glacial meltwater. The pipeline system remains fragile. This diverted water travels over 100 kilometers toward the Rimac watershed, ensuring the coastal metropolis does not suddenly dry up during prolonged regional droughts. The sprawling capital also requires immense, upgraded power grids to sustain its booming technological sector and provide electricity to the sprawling hillsides covered in informal housing. Energy companies utilize massive natural gas pipelines stretching from the dense Amazon jungle, crossing the extreme altitudes of the Andes to fuel the illuminated modern skyline. Pedestrians crossing busy intersection corridors in Miraflores are surrounded by glowing time-lapse traffic lights and massive digital billboards advertising global luxury brands. They walk above fragile ground. Citizens remain completely detached from the frightening geographical reality lying just beneath the asphalt, trusting modern engineering to protect them from the inevitable tectonic shifts. Welding steel beams high above the financial district, fearless construction workers assemble towering skyscrapers equipped with advanced base isolators designed by international engineering firms. These specialized foundations allow buildings to roll smoothly rather than snap violently when the Earth eventually releases centuries of built-up pressure along the Nazca subduction zone. A Lima construction site aerial easily reveals this hypermodern approach to seismic safety, where architectural blueprints integrate indigenous concepts of structural flexibility alongside cutting-edge dampening technologies. The infrastructure constantly fights violent nature. Down at the historic port of Callao, towering commercial container cranes load massive cargo ships in harbor facilities that never sleep regardless of the weather. Port authorities handle millions of tons of extracted copper and lucrative agricultural exports every single year, driving a significant portion of the national Peruvian economy. Exhausted dock workers manage the constant flow of lucrative global trade, operating heavy equipment alongside massive highway cloverleafs recently constructed to expedite complex freight movement. These winding concrete ramps route heavy trucks efficiently out of the highly congested capital region, bypassing residential zones that historically suffered from intense industrial pollution. The commercial pace never truly slows. Current Lima urban planning map documents show several ambitious proposals to drastically expand the metropolitan rail network over the next 2 decades. Urban planners desperately want to connect the distant northern residential cones directly to the southern industrial hubs without relying exclusively on the critically saturated roadway system. Bridge aerials spanning the polluted Rimac River vividly highlight the stark architectural contrast between the decaying pastel facades of the historic center and modern infrastructure. Rapid transit buses hurtle along dedicated concrete lanes, attempting to bring order to a public transportation system historically dominated by chaotic, privately owned microbuses called combis. Traffic dictates daily city life. Breathtaking golden hour drone shots capture the sprawling majesty of a metropolis that brazenly defies strict geographical logic, stretching aggressively across barren sand and jagged rock. Rainy neon streets are exceptionally rare here, but when the thick seasonal mist heavily descends, the coastal city abruptly transforms into a moody, cinematic landscape. Lima Financial District crowd movements demonstrate a relentless driving energy that pushes the Peruvian economy forward despite lingering political instability and severe social inequality. In 1945, municipal planners modified many historic plazas specifically to accommodate the automobile, prioritizing wide asphalt boulevards over safe pedestrian walkways and green public spaces. Modern planners desperately want those spaces back. The municipal government is now actively reclaiming urban public spaces, establishing extensive cycling networks directly along the high cliffs to promote healthier, emission-free transportation alternatives. Ecologists are planting thousands of drought-resistant trees across concrete-heavy neighborhoods to combat severe urban heat island effects exacerbated by rising global temperatures and climate change. Rusty scaffolding towers stubbornly cling to deteriorating colonial wooden balconies as preservationists work feverishly to save the last magnificent remnants of the powerful Spanish viceroyalty. Salt-heavy marine winds relentlessly erode the carved mahogany details completely, making historical preservation a highly expensive, never-ending battle against the corrosive Pacific Ocean air. Survival demands continuous urban adaptation. A beautifully restored old lighthouse stands proudly right at the very edge of the Miraflores cliffs, acting as an iconic historical beacon for passing naval vessels. High-speed global fiber optics run directly beneath its ancient foundational stones, perfectly illustrating the extreme duality of a city suspended between deep history and digital futures. The complex story of this incredible South American capital is not merely about enduring harsh desert terrain or surviving devastating tectonic violence over several centuries. It is ultimately about a fierce, relentless push to expand against all logical odds, utilizing raw human ingenuity to conquer an entirely inhospitable coastal environment. The desert provides no natural forgiveness. From the initial devastating blow of the 1746 cataclysm to the hyperconnected, sprawling megacity hugging the vast Pacific coastline today, resilience shapes every single brick. Engineering marvels ranging from ancient seismic-resistant bamboo walls to multi-billion-dollar subterranean metro systems highlight a population that absolutely refuses to surrender to the volatile Earth. Sustaining an artificial oasis for over 10 million lives requires constant infrastructural evolution, immense political willpower, and an unwavering belief in architectural progress. Lima remains a vibrant, chaotic living paradox where dusty ancient history mixes effortlessly with massive pours of modern structural concrete on a daily basis. It defies nature every single day.